So I'm Jelle. I do design and code at Fee, and Fee is a shoppable Instagram. It's like an e-commerce. We're based in Berlin, and half a year ago we launched our iOS app, and there's React Native and Clojurescript inside. So I'll tell you about the process making this, the hurdles we came across, the success stories whatsoever. So when I started at Fee, I got the task to make a mobile app, and since everybody was doing Clojure at work, like we already had a website in Clojure, we thought like, okay, are we going to learn ObjectiveC, or are we going to use one of those like web view wrappers, like Cordova or PhoneGap? So we made a small prototype in this, and it didn't feel native enough. It was like very clunky, and it was just like as if you wrap a website, you just go to a web page, and we dumped that in the App Store. So we wanted to be a mobile app business, and this just then didn't feel native enough. But we're a startup, and writing an app twice is very expensive. So about the time I joined, React Native came out, and we were like, okay, so maybe we should look into it. It's very new, but let's give it a try. So React Native, what is it? It's a mobile app framework by Facebook, and it allows you to write native apps in JavaScript. So you orchestrate the native views, so no more web views, native views with JavaScript. So there's a VM running on iOS called JavaScript Core. It allows you to interpret JavaScript, and Facebook built a bridge to ObjectiveC. So you could talk with JavaScript to ObjectiveC, and actually you don't have to type ObjectiveC anymore. So, and since it's React, you are able to write your UIs with JSX. It's also now available on Android, and it will come on Windows soon. It's complete. It's Facebook uses it themselves for I think the groups application and for the ads. I need to check this. Don't quote me on this, but. So the things they needed for those applications, those are solid, and those come with React Native. React Native is also quite extensible, so if it's not on this list, you might be able to find it in the ecosystem. So since you don't do Objective-C, you have a lot of benefits, and if you ever seen an Objective-C developer at work, they would be like typing code, pressing play in Xcode, waiting for the thing to show up, and that's like the feedback cycle. So with React Native, you don't have this anymore, and the JavaScript is being reloaded on the fly. So you save your JavaScript file, it's being live reloaded in your simulator. So the simulator doesn't have to restart anymore. That's due to that the JavaScript runs on a different thread, and you can hot swap this JavaScript out there. So because it's this bundle of JavaScript, you can also get around the App Store review times. So recently it improved from 1 week to just 1 day, but it's still a nasty process. Like it's this review, and you're always like, will Apple accept my build? Will it not? So you can get around this review by using, for instance, Microsoft's Code Push. They have a service, so you can serve your JavaScript bundle online. Okay, enough JavaScript. There's such thing called Clojurescript, and it compiles to JavaScript, and to my taste, it's like it's way more simple and it's more robust. So since we already do Clojure at Phi, this was an easy choice, and so here's some kudos. I think we heard quite some already here at the conference, and so it's a really good fit for React. So Clojurescript, the Clojurescript community initiated this spark of like, oh, immutable data structures suit so well with React, and so immutable.js is like a copy of Mori.js, which are just like Clojurescript's immutable data structures made public to JavaScript. So the Clojurescript world is very inspiring, especially in combination with React's paradigm. So there's some more extras you get, like you can do logic programming, pattern matching, CSP. It all comes for free with Clojurescript. So instead of learning like ECMAScript 2030, you could also just learn a language which comes with a lot of things for free, which you normally otherwise would search like libraries for. So how do these two blend together, React Native and Clojurescript? It's quite a tooling effort you need to go through, because Clojurescript comes with its own compilation step, and so you need to compile Clojurescript to JavaScript and then put this in the packager and push it to React Native land. So there are a couple of efforts. Natal by Mike Fikes was the first one, and it did everything over WebDAV, and it was the first set of tooling we used at work, and it worked okay. It was unstable at times, but it worked well for the time being, especially because at the time there was no REPL yet on React Native. There was no hot reloading yet, so it gave us all of this out of the box in Clojurescript. Currently, we're on boot React Native, but there's also another big player called Renatal. The difference between the two is that Renatal is based on Leiningen, which is one of the two build tools within Clojure land, and boot React Native is based on Boot. There's also an effort called Ktoa, which takes Renatal and adds web to it. So you would also be able to write your website with this. And there's an effort to make React Native available to the desktop as well. So you can use what you normally would do on iOS, you would get on OS X, like a OS X binary. So it's a good match. Like you get this hot reloading, you get the Clojurescript REPL integration, Hotswap, and actually it's pretty cool. I'm going to show you a small demo. This is a simulator, iOS simulator on the right. And this could be your device. You could just have your device open with React Native running there. And on the left, it's my editor, and I'll be resetting the counter on the right. So you can just do that interactively, interact with the state while it's running on your device. I can edit some views, so this is like making some colors red, and see that the state is being preserved while it's reloading. So this you get for free while doing Clojurescript with React Native. So a bit about our experience building this. So it went really quick. I didn't expect this to go so quick. So I made the designs like for 14 screens, and we implemented them in 4 weeks. And it was surprisingly how fast the the performance, like how it performed out of the box. I didn't expect this. Well, it's native, but with these layers on top of layers of compilers and whatsoever, it was great. So here's we released in February, and this is our app being featured in the App Store. And here's a small demo. So what you'll see now is like this is like a third-party element. It's a slider, and so this is all native. The scroll views. This is a native Facebook SDK which we've used. So infinite scroll views are possible. You can do animations, you can kind of forms whatsoever. So, great. Initial thoughts, this is super positive. This is easy to integrate. We can use things from React land, from Clojurescript land, from Objective-C land. And we can reuse a lot of the things from our website, like the logic, because it's all Clojure, even views and such. Oh, so yeah. You can combine it together with whatever you want. So you can use Ohm, you can use Reagent, Rum, anything Clojurescript which targets React. So in Clojurescript land, it's quite common to use Hiccup. And Hiccup looks like this. It's like a HTML done in Clojure data structures. It's quite elegant. I really prefer it over JSX or HTML itself because it's quite dense. And so here's an example of a web view, so where you would have divs and spans and images. IMG, sorry, that's a typo. And in React Native land, you would have, instead of a div, you would have a view, you would have just text. So more generic components. It's an analog, but it's named different often. So we used Reagent, and you would integrate it like this. So you would require React Native, and you would then plug the view and the text and image of the React Native namespace, and you would adapt these into Reagent classes. And vice versa, it's also possible. So you would make a Reagent component, and you can then give that back to React Native. So debugging, there's multiple ways, and it's so you're flexible in your approach. You can there's a lot of tools within Xcode and the simulator. There's the Chrome debugger, which comes with React Native. It opens up your Chrome, and you're able to manipulate the JavaScript runtime. There's source maps, and there's this Clojurescript REPL, as you've seen in the demo. So undefined is still not a function. In React Native in the simulator or on your device, you would get a red screen if you trigger exceptions, and you can choose where to log them out, whether it's in your terminal or in your Xcode. And it's quite nifty. If you would click on one of the errors, you would actually be redirected in Vim or whatsoever to the actual corresponding file. Testing. So you can use the standard unit test tools for Clojurescript. You can do integration tests. We currently do it with KIF, but Appium seems to be a bit better, and like you're able to tap into the actual JavaScript runtime. Okay, now it will be a bit more less positive, but still. So styling, you do not with CSS. So you don't have CSS files, but you do everything inline. That's quite tricky, especially if you don't really have good tools. So most of the sorry, aircon in the hotel. If you don't have proper CSS tools, this is quite hard. The navigator is super imperative for now. More about that later. And since it's a fairly new project, React Native moves so fast. They do every 2 weeks a release. And so it's at the moment it's release 28. And well, we're like behind 9 versions or so. It's just so hard to keep up. And tooling was very brittle in the beginning, as I told. Who knows what this is? Sorry? Android screens. There are about 27,000 different screen sizes in Android land. And if you don't have media queries in your CSS, that's quite hard to deal with, especially if you want to make your app look good. Styling is still, I think, very like simple in React Native land. So you have Flexbox, but that doesn't cover all of the cases. Also, you can't reuse stuff because it's all done in JavaScript maps. And, well, we all know how hard it is to merge JavaScript maps and such. So I thought, like, okay, I need to make 14 screens. I need to do a lot of styling. I want something I'm used to on the web, like Bass. And so we did. So we made a small open source library. It's called Lookbook. And it's like Bass, so like a utility set of CSS. And you can compose your styling through your React Native app that way. It's all being pre-compiled, so you don't have any overhead during the runtime, and it's really fast. So this is how it looks. So you see some hiccup here, and so Vue has a style, and it has a background color green, full width, padding 15. And that then expands to this on compilation time. I still haven't figured out how to do proper responsiveness. We're not entering Android land yet, but I can imagine it to be something like this. Okay, so another big problem is the tooling, and most of it's now fixed. But yeah, this was kind of broken in the beginning. So especially Boot React Native, they were quite quick to allow quicker compilation. So instead of like having to wait 5 seconds for your change to show up, it now showed up in like milliseconds, even faster often than vanilla JavaScript. So that's great. So hot reloading came out of the box with Clojurescript, which is great. Yeah, that way you don't have to touch Xcode again, which is, you don't have to deal with like this IDE, which takes ages to start up. Unfortunately, upgrading is still not easy with both Boot React Native and Reagent. So, if I didn't discourage you too much. I'm really excited about this technology, and I would like to invite you to have a play with it. Renatal is the most beginner friendly. It comes with some scaffolding. It comes with some scaffolding, and it's really easy to get started that way. You can give it a try with the CSS utility library we wrote. Since recently, I have a newsletter which I link to a lot of React stuff and Elm, Clojurescript whatsoever. And I want to give a thank you to these 4 people who are actively working on making React Native with Clojurescript possible. And I'd like to thank you.
Hi. Why is it that in the hiccup syntax for React Native you have to pass a function first instead of keywords?
So in comparison with the web, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So because they're actually React components in React Native, and there's no notion of a DOM as you have on the web, where divs are known already or whatsoever. So you need to actually include all of those view and text. You need to make them Reagent ready first, because Reagent doesn't recognize them.
Hi. I wanted to ask about the updates. As you said, you can push updates to your application without passing the verification, the checking of your application by Apple. Are you using it, and is Apple still not doing any problems about that? That you're not really checking what are you pushing to your application? Yeah, thanks.
So we don't use it at V because when we were about to implement it, Apple lowered the time to to 1 day, the review time. So it's not that necessary for us anymore, and it adds quite a lot of complexity, right? Like you need to keep track of, okay, do we need to release, do a full release now by putting an app in the store, or can we push this within JavaScript itself? Because sometimes you still need to push the complete binary to the store. So it's kind of tricky. Like when do you have to do that? When not? And I think we were afraid that we would lose track of this when this would be necessary. Apple doesn't complain about this yet, and they're like, this was a couple of months ago. I've talked with the people behind CodePush, and they said like there are about 600 apps in the store on React Native and on CodePush, and Apple doesn't seem to complain. Also, in their terms and conditions, it's I think they reversed the rule that it's not allowed 2 years ago. So yeah, that answers your question.
Very insightful talk. Thank you, Jelle.
Thank you.